Hello again, word lovers. We've looked at words which come into English from very far-flung roots, and a lot of the languages they passed through no longer exist. How many words in English could be said to come from a dead language if we exclude Greek, Latin, and even Hebrew? And another question, how does a language die? Well, there is a list of languages in danger on the internet, a list which includes Scots, Yiddish and Romani. But these would be among the very largest endangered languages. Some languages are listed with 5, 4, 2 or 1 speaker, and that's how languages die. Manuel Segovia and Isidro Velázquez were the last speakers of Ayapaneco in Mexico, but for some reason, and to the frustration of linguists and etymologists, they simply refuse to speak to each other. One of the many Native American languages on the verge of extinction went extinct on a known date, which was the date of the death of Hazel Sampson, the last known speaker, in 2014. But what about the languages which covered vast areas and were almost language empires which don't exist anymore? Well, first candidate, the Yeniseian languages of central Siberia, not related to neighbouring language families, but possibly related to North American Indian languages like Navajo. The last language of this group is Ket, which is described as moribund. And how about those peculiar languages which still exist but are known as language isolates? They have long, healthy lives, but no linguistic connection to the languages around them. Now, of these, there are about 6 in Africa, 8 in Asia, which includes Korean and Japanese, a hell of a lot in Africa and Oceania and the Americas. And as with everything, it's not exactly clear what we mean by language isolate. Things that we thought were isolates, we now know are not. Finnish, for example, is not an isolate. It's part of Finnic Uralic Estonian group, what used to be called Lab, which is now not politically correct for whatever reason, now known as Samic groups, including Ugric, Hungarian and Iranian loanwords from over 1,000 years ago. And in the central and northern parts of Europe, joining Sanskrit, Pali and Aramaic in the dead languages group, we get Old English, Middle English, and Gothic, which is the only East Germanic language that we know much about because it was written. Other languages, such as Burgundian and Vandalic, have no written records. All that we know about them comes from loanwords in other languages and references in history to them. Modern Basque, spoken in regions of Spain and France, is the only descendant that still exists of the Vasconic languages. It's still known as La Vascongada in Spanish, and the País Vasco, the Basque country, and is a language isolate, not spoken anywhere else, almost certainly spoken before the arrival of Indo-European languages. Previous to Basque was Aquitanian, which was spoken before the Romans came to the Iberian Peninsula. Many, many tribal languages have gone from Italy, for example, and to finish with some of the British ones that have disappeared. In the Brittonic and Neo-Brittonic group, for example, you have Welsh, Cumbric, Cornish, Breton, and probably Pictish, of which only Welsh and Breton survive. Cumbric was a language spoken in what was the Old North, then called Hen Ogledd, which looks a lot like Welsh to me, and indeed it came from Old Welsh. The English county is Cumbria, the Welsh name for Wales is Cymru, Cambria and Cumberland also come from here. The Combrogis, the compatriots, was the name of the tribe. Pictish became subsumed into Gaelic. Galwegian Gaelic was a mixture of Scandinavian and Gaelic languages and peoples. from which we get the name Galloway. The people themselves were called the Gal Gadhail, meaning the stranger Gadhail. Middle English emigrated to Ireland, and an extinct Anglic language was once spoken in Wexford, among other places. And Fingalian was spoken in Fingal in Ireland, again an offshoot of Middle English brought to Ireland during the Norman invasion. And finally Norn, which died in the 17th century, a North Germanic language spoken in Orkney and Shetland. So somewhere along the way, all those languages will have dropped a word into another language, which has been carried along on the current into a modern equivalent. But the languages themselves, I'm afraid, all gone.